Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, brought to you by the ad-free shows, the podcast feed, and the Wrestling According to Alba Networks. I'm John Alba. That's the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. What's going on, my man? It is, as we tape this Wednesday, just ahead of Bound for Glory. You are in the Motor City.
Thursday. It is Thursday.
Today's Thursday. That's what.
Thursday. Yeah. All good. We got a lot going on.
We're supposed to tape Wednesday, but now
right. We were initially going to tape Wednesday, but just going crazy. Been on a crazy media binge. Been going nuts everywhere. Doing live TV, doing live radio, doing media scrums. You know, we had a press conference. All kinds of stuff going on. But anyway, I was just going to say, too, if you are watching this Friday morning, bright and early, like I love it when people do that. This shirt that I'm wearing right now, which is a throwback, and it is a very cool, badass shirt. It is only available for 1 hour only. It goes on sale at Pro Wrestling Tees at 12 noon, and it will sell till 1 o'clock. And if you don't get it then it's gone. It's gone forever. You'll never see it again. It's something that's been very trendy at Pro Wrestling Tees, so we're giving it a shot.
Okay, fear is only a 4-letter word. That's classic Hardy's right there. Very cool, very cool. Yeah, you're in Detroit. You're at the Pistons game. I saw you courtside there with Joe Hendry. He's becoming like the third Hardy boy these days.
He really is. That was Joe's first NBA game. That's the first time he's ever been at a basketball game in general. I know you'd ask me. I've been to a couple of Charlotte Hornets games. I've been to some college games, NC State, and I've been to several UNC games. But he really enjoyed it. He didn't understand basketball. I said, what I really like about it is that every second counts, and every shot counts. And they had a rough night, man. Detroit had a very rough night when it came to shooting. They missed a lot of free throws. They missed a lot of shots, and it is what it is. But we had a great time there, and they took such great care of us. It was such a great crew. The people that work backstage, like the people who were the social media people, from the cheerleaders, the band, the team that went out and did the Harlem Globetrotters Act, that represent the Pistons. They were just all great. They were all so professional. They fed us well. They took great care of us. They gave us a ton of merch. So good. So Joe Hendry, just so you know, he officially believes in the Detroit Pistons.
Does he? Well,
yeah.
There aren't a ton of people who do. So I guess
they need him. They need him on their side, I think.
Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, I saw they're playing the Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton was there. He's a huge wrestling fan, and he's the star of the Pacers. Have you ever had any famous athletes come up to you and be like, yo, the Hardys?
Charles Barkley came up to Jeff and I in a club one time, and somewhere in Alabama when we were there. Yeah.
Can you tell that story, please?
Yeah, we were out after a WWE show. This was probably 2000-ish, I would say. And we're hanging out. A bunch of the other guys were there. Just everybody was just kind of hanging out, having a good time, whatever. So then and Nate came over and said, hey, what's going on, guys? I love that stuff you do, and those TLC matches and all the stuff you've been doing is so cool and so innovative. And yeah, it was Charles Barkley.
Holy shit.
I think he knew someone, that one of the older guys, one of the top guys, he was buddies with him or whatever, and he came out to see him. And he just came it laid some pleasantries on us, which was neat.
Oh, and Charles Barkley, that's a Hall of Famer right there, man. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. Chuck. Oh, he's
there were a couple of the players from the Pistons that came over and said, "Oh man, I got to give you props, man. Just
that's cool.
And stuff like that. The guys who were just over on the bench or weren't in the game at that time. So yeah, it was great, man. It was a really, really good experience, and we did have a really fun time.
You've been around some amazing athletes in wrestling, but I'll tell you, for my money, having covered all the major sports, NBA athletes are the most incredibly gifted of any of them, because when you think about what they're able to do finesse-wise at that size, at 6'6", 6'7", it's unparalleled, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. And I was going to say that, my favorite basketball player of all time, the guy who really made me like basketball, which you can probably guess who this is. He's a Carolina guy, Michael Jordan. He was in the system, UNC Tar Heels. He's from Wilmington. But yeah, he's the guy probably I would want to meet and interact with. And I would with Michael, I'd say, oh, can I please get a picture with you? I'm a big Michael Jordan fan.
Yeah, that guy did all right for himself, I think.
He had a pretty good
run. You an MJ or LeBron guy then? Because LaBrizzle's a big WWE fan, big wrestling.
Yeah, no, I dig him. I dig him, but I got to be loyal to MJ, man.
Okay.
I'm a Jordan guy through and through. The fact that he wore Carolina blue and played at Carolina, and I was a big fan, and that's like where I was like, oh man, I want to go to school there. I want to go to college there, and ended up doing a little time at UNC Charlotte. But Michael Jordan. Yeah. Michael Hayes was inspirational too. But Michael Jordan was just so inspirational to both myself and Jeff.
Perhaps inspirational to different audiences, but yeah,
they totally were.
That's good. I don't know if you saw LeBron made some history this week. Stepped on the court with his son for the first time in an NBA game.
Jeff was just telling me about that. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Well, it's just cool because, one day, who knows? You might be able to do that with Maxwell one day.
I think so. I think I could squeak out a match with Maxwell, especially when I'm just the will man. I can drive. I can just go in there for a few minutes and let him take all the bumps.
Take it on tour.
Yeah.
There you go, man. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, Bound for Glory, Full Metal Mayhem, the system, ABC, big deal, man. This is potentially, as we discussed last week, the last stand for the Hardys in a tables, ladders, and chairs style match here. What's the anticipation feeling like for you?
The anticipation is through the roof. And even here in Detroit, everybody seems to feel that way. They're very, very excited for this match. There was a lot of... We didn't have our opponents there, myself and Jeff. We spoke at the press conference today, which was Thursday. And we just talked about, literally, this is very important to us because I know just during our time with AEW, Jeff very much acknowledged he didn't do everything right, obviously. But we felt like upon finishing AEW, there were some people that maybe didn't believe in us, maybe they doubted us, whatever else. And my point of coming to TNA was to get that chance to, once again, just make them believe once again, not to try and buy into Joe Henry stuff, but just make the fans believe that the Hardys, it's not past tense. They aren't, that we were great. We are great. And that's what we are going to accomplish. And they're going to have to maim us. They're going to have to cripple us. They're going to have to kill us to keep us from winning this match because we're pulling all stops out. And Jeff said today, he said, I'll tell you, this is either going to be my last match ever because I'm going to self-destruct, or it's going to be one of the greatest matches ever, and it's going to be a resurgence of the Hardys. And I very much feel that way as well. That's also my mentality going into it.
Jeff will fade away and classify himself obsolete.
Obsolete.
Hey, man, I'm stoked for you guys. It's a great opportunity. TNA's got some buzz right now. You've been talking a lot about the live gates and them drawing good houses, and people are talking, and that's always huge. Man, Leon Slater and Mike Bailey, you kidding me?
Yeah,
that's a match right there.
Yeah,
in 2024 should be great. Very excited. I don't know if you saw Maple Leaf Pro. Did you see any of their debut last week?
I saw a lot of clips online. Yeah,
really good stuff. Really good stuff. What do you think about Mauro Ranallo as an announcer?
He's good. He's very unique in his style, and I like how he takes his job so serious. He very much sounds like a legitimate sportscaster as he is doing his commentary. So I do appreciate that.
He's a lot of fun. Takeshita and Mike Bailey, man. You kidding me?
Yeah. Man, I saw where Mike Bailey did that 1.5 shooting star.
Shooting star.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Talented dude.
No doubt about that, or as they'd say in Canada, no dude to boot it. Because he is. You talk about ceiling, man. Let me ask you that. What do you think Mike Bailey's ceiling is? Because there's some rumors about him and TNA, his contract allegedly coming up soon.
Yeah.
What could you see him accomplishing in the industry?
I mean, I definitely think he could be a very important cog in an AEW machine. I think he could also be a very important cog in a WWE machine. I think he's that talented, and he really understands what he is. He has such a great understanding for the business. He understands how to work with different people. I could tell immediately, when I was working with him and Trent Seven, and we were constructing things, putting things together, he totally understood the way I should be utilized and the way he should utilize himself and stuff in our matches. And he really impressed me a lot. He grew on me very quickly. And I think he's an extremely talented guy. And I think he has a lot to offer the business. You
think he would find success in the WWE system?
I think he could. Yeah. I do think he could, especially now with the new regime, where it's a little bit of a different mindset, especially towards smaller guys and whatnot. I think he could.
I would hope so, regardless of wherever he ends up, because huge
Especially
fan.
in NXT. I think he would thrive in NXT. And I do think he could even supersede that and end up on the main roster in some spot.
I think Mike Bailey would do very well on the main roster if given the opportunity, but there's just so much talent there. There's so much talent there right now. And they're heading to Saudi Arabia soon, so a whole bunch of stuff going on over there. Goldberg could be coming back again in 2024, which is just absolutely nuts to think about. So lots of craziness going on in the world of wrestling. Anything else you want to hit on before we really get into our meat and bones topic this week, Matt?
No, just really want to encourage everyone to try and catch Bound for Glory this weekend. It's going to be a very, very special pay-per-view. It's loaded from top to bottom. It's got great matches, and once again, we're at about 3,000 people seating. It's going to sell out the Saturday night show, so it's an exciting time. It's a really exciting time. Like, there is legitimate buzz behind TNA once again, and I love to see it.
Something else that's very exciting, Matt. We are headed to WrestleCade Thanksgiving weekend. It is Night Outcade with the Hardys. You're going to hear stories from the extreme life of Matt Hardy. You're going to hear music from Jeff Hardy and a whole lot more. You never know what goes down with these live events when we bring them to your town. This is at WrestleCade on the Saturday night. This is Thanksgiving weekend, which will be, if I'm not mistaken, November 30th. You're going to be able to find this show immediately after the main WrestleCade show. Get your tickets now, WrestleCade.com. We've done WrestleCade for 2 years, Matt. This is our third year doing it. It's always one of our favorite weekends of the year, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's always a blast. And I can't wait to meet all the people. It has truly become, WrestleCade has become a staple in the Mid-Atlantic area, which it's a big event. It brings in a lot of unique people that you might not get to see at any other time besides just at WrestleCade. And every time we're there, we're in Hardy country, right? Winston-Salem, definitely Hardy country. And myself and Jeff, we stay slammed all day long, and we love it. We're there for it. But it's always great to interact with those fans. And then we're going to do a podcast on top of it. So it's beautiful. That's the cherry on top.
It's going to be a ton of fun. You can get the podcast first. You're going to get Jeff Hardy live right after that. It is a Night Outcade with the Hardys. We love doing these shows. We love teaming up with Jeff here. They're great partners in the ring, and out of the ring they are as well. Those damn Hardys. You're going to want to make sure you check them out in Hardy country nonetheless. WrestleCade.com. Get your tickets now. November 30th is going to be at night after the WrestleCade live show. It's going to be a great time. We are very, very excited for that. Okay, Matt Hardy. We are going to talk about wrestling media because you had a chance to go to the press conference earlier today. But before we can do that, you know what I got to ask. Please hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact: Matt prefers a room near the elevator.
Because your skills have diminished and you need to just shorten the amount of steps you take? What's the deal here?
No, this came over the last couple of days. So anytime we came back to the room here, like a couple of times we had to do Zooms. We had to do a couple of online things as far as interviews and media promoting Bound for Glory, the pay-per-view and the live event. But my room is like it's a waving walk all down a hall, and it takes like 90 seconds to get from my room to the elevator. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm noticing, like, I was like annoyed because I had to keep walking back and forth. If I was going to come back to my room and get something or whatever else. It's like, I just want a room that is by the elevator. So it's like literally step out of your room, take a couple steps, boom, into the elevator and down, like save you on time, especially when you go, okay, well, we've got 10 minutes. You can go up to the room. And then if it takes 2 minutes to get to your room and then you're in your room, then you only have literally 6 minutes. And then 2 minutes, you got to go back down again and meet the guy. So it's like, this is cutting into my time. I want to maximize my time.
So this is about efficiency more than anything.
Yeah, about efficiency. Yeah, especially those long ass walks, man. And I'm the last door on the left. It's like out of a
Those are brutal. Those are brutal.
Yeah.
My apartment complex, the complex kind of looks like a hotel, and I am all the way down, like all the way down. I just take the stairs because it's closer. And,
Right.
my long COVID kicks in after that, and things aren't good. By the way, you see this little memento I've added to the makeshift backdrop here. The if Alba shows up, we riot.
Oh
Coffee
yeah,
mug. I got to get you one of those because one of my patrons over at Wrestling According to Alba sent it to me, and he also sent me these magnets, which you could put up on the Hardy family fridge. And I'm sure Rebecca will be thrilled to have up.
yeah, she'll love it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about wrestling media today. We've talked a little bit about wrestling media on this podcast in the past, but I would love to get your perspective of the state of wrestling media, some of the people who've been involved in wrestling media over the years, media literacy from both the journalism standpoint, fan standpoint, whatever it may be. And this conversation all really started. I was listening to Busted Open this past week, and there was a lengthy conversation between Dave LaGreca, Bully Ray, and Tommy Dreamer about the purpose of wrestling media and media press conferences that WWE and AEW do. And there were a multitude of perspectives given. I wish that they had someone who's a little more active in wrestling media as part of the conversation, which is why I think you and I can have maybe a little more of a conducive conversation on that end of things. But I thought they brought up some good points on it. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't. It's available on their YouTube page. But without summarizing it, Matt, what did you take away from their conversation?
What I took away from it is that LaGreca does enjoy the media scrums, the press conferences following a show, a pay-per-view. And then I feel like as performers that have done this in ring for a long time and trying to contain as much of the magic as possible, I think that Tommy Dreamer and Bully, I think they were both kind of discussing some of the detrimental effects of bringing certain performers in front of the media and having them answer questions and maybe not continuing the charade, from the show onto the media scrum, because it's weird. Like, I understand if you're doing those things, you want to do it like in a serious speak. You want to do it in a serious state where you're really answering the question. You ask a question, you get a straightforward answer. And I just feel like wrestling is something that is so different from like regular sports. I get it if you're interviewing people after the Super Bowl, you're interviewing them after the NBA championship, you're interviewing them after they win the World Series, right? And someone sits down, they answer the questions, but everything they've done was just legitimate. Like they legitimately won the game, they legitimately did all these things. And there are so many things in pro wrestling that aren't necessarily legitimate. It is an entertainment industry where there are bits and pieces that you really don't necessarily want to have to go into depth to, because you don't want to always like reveal the magic or reveal the secrets, especially to like your casual fans, as I so love to, refer to them as. And I feel like that's kind of the difference of perspectives that were coming out in their discussion.
Well, that's a whole conversation at the micro level about the press conferences in and of themselves. So we can get into that as we discuss this whole conversation on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, which, by the way, check out extremehardy.com. So we're going to find all of our episodes in the archives. Last week, we talked about the No Mercy Tag Team Ladder match. It was a great episode. We've been rocking and rolling here. We are approaching 3 years of this podcast, which is wild. And you had to take a risk in and of itself in pairing up with me when we started this. Someone coming from the more traditional media world, and I'd like to even ping your brain about that too as we talk about all this. But I guess let's start here. When do you first remember wrestling media, wrestling publication coming into the fold for you? What was your first encounter with a wrestling publication? Was it as a fan? Was it as a wrestler? What can you recall?
As a fan, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And one of the biggest things that I loved about them so much is how they did the rankings, the rankings in each division. And it was funny because even in this interview, I'm going to go back to the Busted Open thing. Like, I want to say it was Bully that said it. He said, do you remember when they would do like in the Wrestler or Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and they would interview someone about how the writer like manufactured all those conversations, which sounds about right. But I feel like even the magazines back in the day, even though they had the rankings, which, they kind of did on their own, but it seemed like something that would be half-assed legitimate. They still kind of like kept up the magic in the way they would do these interviews or the way they would portray the matches.
So the PWI catches your attention. You're not really reading it for journalistic prowess per se. You're enjoying the entertainment value of it. So I think a lot of people, especially from that era, probably had that. You know, the After magazines. Did you ever read an After mag per se?
Of course, yeah.
What'd you take away from those?
I mean, very similar. I mean, I think as I was reading as a kid, I was like, oh wow, this, he must be there. He must have insight. He must talk to these people or whatever else, But then, like as I look back on it, I was like, wow, that was heavily drafted entertainment. You know what I mean? That they were putting in there, and I was good with it. I liked it because I didn't, not until I started becoming involved in the business, I didn't want to know all the ins and outs of shit. I just wanted to kind of I wanted to be entertained. And if I would read an article and it entertained me and I liked it, then I was good with that. It kind of, it kept the magic intact.
That's what I was going to follow up with. So you weren't taking interest in the quote unquote, and I really do hate the term, but the dirt sheets. You weren't interested in the behind the scenes news until around when?
I mean, once again, I couldn't have cared less about it, especially when I first started as a fan. I just wanted to watch the product, and I was just so compelled by it. Probably showed interest in kind of wanting to know some of the ins and outs of the business, maybe around 1994-ish. And I think we discussed this one time, and I think you were, after I said, we had our first match in 1992, and then in 1993, we started doing independence pretty regularly. In 1994, we started with WWF being enhancement talent, and it was probably 1994 when that really got on my radar, and I kind of started caring a little bit because I wanted to learn more about the business. And I feel like you were kind of taken aback that 93, you're in there and you're doing independent wrestling, and you didn't really care about the insides and outs.
No, I guess it's more what causes that curiosity, and is that common among wrestlers? How much is that stuff on the radar when they're trying to break into the industry?
Well, once again, I had myself and Jeff, we had zero connections in pro wrestling. So we didn't know anyone. Once we started working with Stallion and George South in 1993, and then we would work for them every 2 or 3 weekends at that point until, once we started doing enhancement work with those guys and they were carrying us to New York, brother. Then we had to do all their shots, any that we could drive to. So I think just when they started calling things in the ring, they were using Carney. They were using terminology that only people would use in pro wrestling. And I was like, hold up, I need to learn more about this, and there's some resources out there where you can learn more about the inner workings of the business. And I think that's kind of why I first generated interest in a dirt sheet or just about, behind the scenes stuff.
Okay, so I know you've heard us talk about Mando whole body deodorant at this point on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Personally, I saw it on television for the first time, and when I saw it, I immediately had us reach out to them because I truly do believe in this product. I believe it is one of the most useful body tools out there on the market today. And why is that? Well, let me tell you why. You see, you can use Mando on your whole body. Yes, your entire body. It's dermatologist tested and gentle on all of your bits. It controls odor for 72 hours, and that is clinically proven. And you can choose from 4 cologne quality scents or even unscented if you want to get a little stealthy. I actually prefer getting stealthy with Mando because sometimes if you're wearing something that smells artificial, people are going to pick up on it. My personal favorite product from Mando are the deodorant wipes. 24-hour odor control. They're for the pits, they're for the packages, they're for the feet and beyond, and they're great for on-the-go use and travel. I'm always running in and out of New York City when I'm on television, and it gets sweaty. I got to wear a suit. Even in the colder winter months, you got to feel like you need a shower without needing a shower, and that's what the deodorant wipes actually help you accomplish. I cannot speak highly enough about these and several other of Mando's products. So I want to help you upgrade here to Mando because I believe that this is a product that is truly helping Average Joes, professional wrestlers, athletes, sportscasters, and anyone in between feel good, smell good, or neutral if you would prefer. And I fully hope that you listen to the words that I am about to heed upon you. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Now, thankfully, we here at the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy have a discount code to help you get hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack in total. Use code Hardy at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. When you're coming up in the Funkin' Dojo, mid to late 90s here in WWF, are wrestlers paying attention to what the Dave Meltzers, what the Wade Kellers are writing?
I think people were. I think they were probably secretly kind of keeping up with it more than anything else because it wasn't something that was encouraged, obviously, there. And I think they probably knew there were a lot of people, especially younger people, that probably were trying to read that and get a scoop or like figure out what's going on or, have some sort of, have a more clarified stance on particular issues that were happening in wrestling and whatnot. But I know it was one thing that a lot of times guys didn't discuss that in public because no one wanted to be looked at as like a dirt sheet guy. Because the next thing then in the Wild Wild West, you would get called a stooge, and then you would be labeled that, and that would be a bad thing.
See, so let me bring this to the macro, which I love doing in exposing how dumb pro wrestling can be sometimes. Like, let's equate it to television or movies. TV and movie trades exist, right? The trade magazines, the publications where you find out all the behind the scenes information of who's got a movie in the works, what TV shows in the works, why did this show get canceled, why, all that stuff. These are massive, massive publications that are very legitimate. The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, Variety. These are major, major outlets that wrestling now, ironically, turns to leak information about stuff. AEW did it with the TV deal. WWE does it all the time. Mm-hmm. So if those things exist and they're not looked upon as taboo, why would the Wrestling Observer or the Torch be looked at as taboo?
I think because like once live TV was going on, especially the Monday Night Wars with Nitro and Monday Night Raw, the possibility of spoilers getting out, I feel like talent who would acknowledge that they were a dirt sheet subscriber or someone who read dirt sheets or kept up with that information, that people would be more apt. Vince and his upper staff, right? His inner circle, they would be tempted to think, if they knew that publicly, that maybe these guys are a source for a Dave Meltzer or for a Wade Keller, and like if they could learn spoilers and then give these away, and somehow that gets out, in whichever capacity it may, I feel like that was where the big issue, because they didn't want to give away trade secrets.
So you think it was more they were worried about creative plans getting out than anything else?
Yeah, or even if knowing something was going to go down on a show in a week, and someone was able to get that information out, and they were able to print it, or they were able to get that information circulating. I still feel like they do talk about, like, they hired this guy for the cast of, let's say, the Crow remake that just had, this guy's here, this guy's there, whatever, but like you don't have people that are on the set, and I feel like the specific spoilers of the movie doesn't get out unless it's something that's
that's because there's severe NDAs amongst the cast that if something were to come out, there'd be very serious lawsuits that would come out of it, whereas wrestling that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think they should have NDAs in wrestling then?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a bigger question. Maybe there's a question that should be asked about what makes it different than any other TV show or any other movie. I'm always about asking that question.
And also there are always there a lot of times there's people around wrestling that aren't necessarily wrestlers, but are working behind the scenes, or people that have whatever kind of job, someone who's selling merch, whatever else. And just if anyone can ever learn this information, because those guys work hard and they
Yeah.
hustle, to get their scoops. I know anybody who does stuff, they especially a good reporter, right? They verify it a couple times over and they make sure it's legitimate before going out. But if there is someone that can leak that information, I think that's why the taboo initially started when it came to the dirt sheets. And also on top of that, I also think they would print things that were true, which just left a company in a bad light or poor light, and that's journalism, right? And that's just something that the big bosses of that company just didn't like. They didn't want that info out there.
I do believe that in the last decade or so, we've moved a lot away from pro wrestling reporting being built around spoilers of creative plans. I don't feel like we see a lot of that published anymore.
Right.
Once upon a time, it'd be commonplace where Dave Meltzer would drop what was expected to be the creative plans for someone or a storyline or whatever it may be. You don't really see that very much anymore.
No, I agree with you. That has definitely dwindled.
Why do you think that's changed?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe they feel like it is beneficial for the business and the industry, and they don't want to give that stuff. Maybe they made some sort of deal not to do it, because I feel like when these great surprises happen, when these great cameos or whatever appearance happens, I mean, anytime the pro wrestling business is doing better, I would imagine those guys do better too.
It's fascinating because I can tell you firsthand experience here when I was reporting news in the wrestling side of things. There were many times I knew what a creative plan was and I never reported it because for me, it didn't feel like it really serviced anyone.
And you're right. It doesn't in the big scheme of things.
Because in wrestling, it's a week-to-week television show that's live, so plans can change like that on a whim. So you, as a reporter, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. If you report something and then something gets changed right away, then you look bad, you lose credibility. But two, I just didn't feel like that was productive or conducive to to the art of what is being covered. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm right. I don't know. It didn't feel productive. But were wrestlers inherently curious about finding out some of that information? Because I have no doubt there were probably a good amount of subscribers to the newsletters in the late 90s, early 2000s within pro wrestling. You just didn't know who it was.
Yes, I agree. I'm sure it was, yeah. And they were trying to get as much info about the state of the business and just what is going on, just so that they would know, because like those aren't things that the upper brass would necessarily smarten the talent up on.
The NBA is finally back. A new season means new ways to get into the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's draining threes from beyond the arc? Who's crashing the boards and getting rebounds? Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. First time, new DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Every point counts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HARDY, that's code HARDY for new customers, to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-7897-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/bball. Interesting. Was there anyone, to your knowledge, within WWE who was deliberately tasked with combing through the newsletters or the news websites?
I feel like And once again, I don't know the story. I've heard different versions of it over the years. But Howard Finkel, I think, was a guy who did a lot of this. And once again, they said too that Howard Finkel was a big dirt sheet guy, who would talk to those guys and had good relationships with several guys. And I don't know, Howard always did our travel, and I'll never forget so much. Whenever we were doing, after we left Stallion, and we were doing enhancement work, and it was just myself, Jeff, Jason Arndt, and Marty Garner. And he'd say, all right, well, we're going to do this. And Chief J. Strongbow would like you there for these days. Does that sound good? And I said, yeah. I said, that's great, man. I said, we're good to go. We'll do the job. And he would say, you always say good to go, Matt. He said, I'm going to start saying that back to you. We're good to go. He said, are we good to go? And that was like our little inside joke, our inside terminology. But once again, Howard was a sweetheart. But I no doubt believed he followed the dirt sheets. He was trying to get the inside scoop, know what was going on, and so he could stay afloat, I'm sure, as well. And him interacting with the dirt sheets would not surprise me at all either.
Yeah, speaking of Fink, real quick, Samantha Irvin, by the way, left WWE last week. What do you think of her work?
I like it. Extremely talented, especially I feel like she broke out as a ring announcer very quickly. She became a big breakout star, in that capacity as a ring announcer very, very quickly. And I thought she was very charismatic and did a great job with her work. And just a lot of her reactions you would see too when she was reacting to what she saw in the ring were just fabulous also.
Very authentic and real.
Yeah.
And I think she's on the short list for one of the best of all time. I really do believe that. There's Fink, Michael Buffer. I think she's kind of in that cloud, quite frankly. I think she's tremendous. So good luck to her with whatever she chooses to do. That's funny about Fink. I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard those rumors over the years too, that Vince tasked him personally with keeping up with the sheets just to make sure of what was getting out. But it wouldn't surprise me to hear if someone like Fink or Paul Heyman or anyone of that nature was actively talking to the dirt sheets too.
Paul would do an ECW. Paul Heyman has his claws in everywhere, and he always has, and I'm sure he always will.
Did you know, and if you would like to name specific ones, go for it, but did you know of any wrestlers who were actively talking to the newsletters at that time?
No, I don't actively know anyone that spoke to anyone regularly then, in the 90s. No.
Did anyone take star ratings personally?
No, I don't. Nobody even cared about them then.
Nobody cared.
No, nobody cared. Nobody. No one gave them a second thought.
Okay.
In WWE at that time, everybody was making such good money. Everybody was making good money. Business was up. Houses were sold out, and I think that the audience was just going nuts. They had just the most enthusiastic energy every single night, and that was our barometer. I mean, that was a 5-star performance every night if the crowd was doing that.
You cared more about your cage match ratings.
I didn't even know what cage match was until Tony Khan started talking about it.
I've been using cage match as the primary resource for this podcast.
I know. I know you do. I know you do.
Yeah,
it was one of those things.
Database.
I know it's a great database. It is funny because I still don't even know. I should sit down and learn, but I know it's great for looking up stuff if you want to reference old matches when you find it and whatnot. But just the fact that Tony Khan said that when they said, oh, well, if these numbers are down, attendance or ratings or whatever, I don't even remember the conversation. He said, well, I mean, in cage match, we've been doing some of the best shows we've ever done, and I mean, but how many people typically vote on those? Is it?
It varies. It varies.
What is the most you've ever seen?
It could be a few thousand. It could be a few hundred. It could be 20.
Yeah.
It depending on the event, depending on the promotion. It varies. Well, you know those videos where celebrities read mean tweets about themselves? I should have you read your cage match reviews on the podcast, and we'll see how Matt Hardy reacts to what people have said about his matches. Because as you know, social media, you've got a saying about it.
Oh, yeah. Social media, the best thing about it gives everyone a voice. Social media, worst thing about it gives everyone a voice.
Certainly does.
It's one of those things, though, but just still, that is such a small percentage of people that you are putting your confidence in that it was a great show. And Tony Khan is very much wired that way. I do know that. I mean, because that's how he grew up, right? He was a big fan when the internet was just starting to
You
thrive.
told me a story last night as we were talking about when you were in Jacksonville, right, with him?
Oh yeah, when he knew when I had a match with Owen Hart, it was wild. I mean,
Like you said, he knew the exact date of when you
yeah.
had a match.
I mean, he is so. I mean, he has this crazy photographic memory, and he just knows so many dates. He knows so much random information. I mean, he's amazing when it comes to knowing wrestling information. He is literally a wrestling encyclopedia, wrestling dictionary. He knows so much stuff. You know, he has so much stuff floating around. But just, I feel like if you have an arena full of fans, and say you have 5,000 people in there, and everyone, it's a full house. Say you have 5,000, it's sold out, whatever, and everyone's happy and they're enthusiastic and they're having a great time and they're reacting, yay, boo, whatever you're doing, whatever direction you're taking your company in. I mean, that seems like a win to me. That's a 5-star night. It's just weird that someone would read like, and the internet people, they are not casual fans because they think about wrestling in a different context where they think about it like quality of the match as opposed to like the story and the emotion and the connection and like, why things are happening in the match and like why the performers are trying to get you, why they're trying to get you to be emotionally involved in the scenario they're trying to create. They don't necessarily think that way. They're kind of looking at athleticism and the quality of the match and the realism and maybe the originality or the moves that were done, whatever, and they rate it on that. And I just still think that's such a small niche audience that you're catering to if you just look at them. I get that, like it's a great wrestling show, and those people, they typically don't miss, right? I mean, if it is good wrestling and if it's solid wrestling, they're pretty accurate on giving it, whatever star rating it may be, or Meltzer. But like at the end of the day too, I think, and I've had this argument all along, right, John? Just that it's not necessarily about the quality of the match or how great or how epic the match is. It's like the more compelling story and just the emotion that you're feeling while watching this entertainment event that we are manufacturing in front of you.
You bring up the people on the internet who chime in on stuff like this. I can very much remember this very distinct crossing of the threshold for me as a child of the internet age, the boom of the internet per se, where I watched wrestling. I knew what I was watching was fake, but I was enjoying the entertainment value of it. And I think a lot of wrestling fans, even if they do watch it at the surface level, Matt, they wonder how the sausage is made a little bit. That's always something that it's why you became a wrestler, right? You had that inherent curiosity at the end of the day. You wanted to do this because you wanted to be part of that sausage making process.
Well, I think Jeff and I initially became engaged in pro wrestling just because we thought they were like living, breathing superheroes, as opposed to knowing how the sausage is made. I don't think that was our first motivation.
No, but I'm saying when you're there and you're breaking into the industry, like you become addicted to, okay, how does this happen? How do you get what I'm saying with that?
Yeah,
So,
I mean that becomes intriguing for sure.
Right. So I think for a lot of fans, whether they think about it consciously or not, that kind of sits there. And I can remember crossing that threshold where I discovered these online wrestling websites that are reporting about news and news items and backstage stuff. I was probably maybe 13 or so.
Right.
I'd say somewhere around there. I remember I was addicted to WrestleZone. WrestleZone was huge at the time. That's when WrestleZone was probably one of the premier outlets. And I remember probably around 2009 or so when Chair Shot Reality started happening. And
Right.
Chair Shot Reality was one of the first shows I had ever seen as a sports fan here, right? In like a sports studio style format talking about wrestling. And I thought that was such a unique way to present discussing wrestling. And it's funny, Josh Eisenberg from that is a very close friend of mine now, and Justin LeBar too. And he's with Busted Open doing their Sunday shows. You appeared on Chair Shot Reality, if I'm not mistaken.
I did a couple times, yeah.
A few times.
Say my name, you're Eisenberg.
That's right. There you go. And I just thought that was so cool how that was presented. And we started to see that natural evolution of wrestling media at that juncture, late 2000s, early 2010s, with the internet boom happening.
Right.
And the role of wrestling media starting to change, and the accessibility that people had to these news stories and these rumors, it started to shift. When did you start to notice the industry starting to embrace wrestling media and the internet more within the context of these companies?
I I feel like when you're saying probably like the mid 2010s is when they were starting to embrace them. They're like, okay, well, we're open to having them come and interview or do interviews with websites with WrestleZone or Wrestling Observer or whatever else. I feel like that's when they truly embrace them. I mean, there may have been some times that prior to that when they do that, but like even my run when I first started in WWE, we officially signed early in '98, the beginning of it, and then I worked all the way through like 2011. But it was very rare that they'd say like, "Oh, we're going to have you do this interview, but it's going to be with a wrestling website." That like when you were doing media, you were just doing nonstop radio and nonstop TV, but it wasn't really outlets like that.
And
But
that
I
was just for the purpose of selling tickets to the local events, pretty much.
Yeah, it was too. But also, if you were selling tickets to local events or whatever it may be, nowadays, like when I did media these last couple of days, there was a bunch at WWE when I was there from 2017 through 2020. I did a bunch of stuff as far as media that were like was website related, and it was one of those things where they very much have people like Adam Hopkins, which you know well. He would be very, look, these guys are really good. We'll do this, and they're not going to try and get like a gotcha or whatever else, and they're clear,
For
and
those unaware, because there's a lot of people listening to this who have no idea who Adam Hopkins is. Adam was the head of PR for WWE for a long time, and now he's with AEW.
Yes, and I was mainly saying just to you, but I should say that to the audience as well, which he was, and he was a great guy, but he was always very protective of the talent. He didn't want to put the talent in some sort of position where they ask you like an off the wall question that could possibly be a gotcha or whatever else, and that was smart. You do need to take care of your talent, especially people that maybe aren't as media competent as some of the other more experienced talent is.
So that begs the question then, credibility, right? Who were the outlets that these companies that you worked for, were they viewing as credible at this time? You're talking the 2010s here. We're past the traditional dirt sheet age. We're starting to evolve a little bit.
I mean,
and who did you view as credible on top of that?
I mean, I think there were guys. One of the people I feel like that most people I've worked for. I know Ross Foreman, who is a media guy with TNA, which I was with a lot. I know he's had me do stuff with Mike Johnson. I know WWE had me do stuff with Mike Johnson. I think Mike Johnson is a very good guy. I think he's very fair. He interacts. I've seen Mike Johnson come to shows, and he's there like hanging out, and he might know what's going to happen, but he doesn't, do that spoiler. And he has I feel like a very fair and balanced relationship with most of the wrestling companies. I remember when I was doing TNA and Broken Matt Hardy was getting real hot, and this is something we were talking about before. Like Broken Matt Hardy, when I first started doing it, I went out of my way to try and make people think that I had gone crazy, I'd lost my mind, I was on drugs, whatever. I just wanted them to think that I was totally different. And like I told myself, I wasn't going to come out of that at all, because if I come out of it, then it's over. And like even when I go to WWE, and I'm back to kind of being a half-ass, I'm like a hybrid of old school Matt Hardy and then Broken Matt Hardy too, because I wanted to try and retain as much momentum as I could if we could go do it again. And eventually we did as Woken Matt Hardy. But like, I'll never forget when I was doing TNA and it was right after the final deletion. I said, hey, they really want you on the Wrestling Observer to be on with Dave. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll do it. I'll go as long as he wants to, but I'm not coming out of character. I said, I'm going to talk about the deities, and I'm going to talk about say words crazy and do whatever else. And they said, you sure that'll work? I said, yes, because I am not going to compromise this character right now. And I didn't compromise it until I was forced to compromise it once we went to WWE, and there was like that legal issue with the trademarks and whatnot. But one of the funnest things that I have ever done was when I did like 45 minutes with the Wrestling Observer, and we did a live show.
What did you think of Dave's decision to do that? Because Dave is supposed to be the serious pro wrestling journalist who doesn't feed into the kayfabe bullshit. And yet here he is doing a 45-minute interview with Broken Matt Hardy. And I don't disagree with you. I think it did wonders for both parties.
Yeah.
But Dave crossed a threshold that he had pretty much imposed for himself at that point in doing that.
I mean, it's one of those things, and I had already made up my mind. I was like, if he does want me to do it, I'm going to do it this way. And if he's cool with doing that, then it'll work. But if he doesn't want it that way, and he wants me talking like normal Matt and just discussing the business and whatnot, then that's gonna compromise where I'm at. It's going to compromise my momentum. And I said, we don't have to do it. I said, if we don't do it, that's fine. So it ended up working out, and we ended up doing it.
So what do you think? It is a loaded question, but what do you think of Dave? Because his legacy is enormously polarizing within professional wrestling. There's you trace pro wrestling history back to the 80s. Dave Meltzer is embedded in it, for better or for worse. And there are tons of podcasts. I'm very grateful that ours is not one of them, but there are tons of podcasts out there who build the entirety of their content off of what Dave had to say or what Dave thought about things. So what do you ultimately believe his impact on the industry has been, and how he's impacted wrestling media?
I mean, I over the years, I've met Meltzer several times, and he's always been nice. The Bucks have nice things to say about him. And once again, like when it comes to reporting wrestling, especially if you break some scoop that could be looked at as a negative connotation because the company, a company did something bad or wrong. And I mean, that's their job. I mean, I say this all the time with people. I was like, it was upsetting to me when some of the dirt sheets, when I went through my darker days and I went through my turmoil, because they were reporting stuff. But once again, that was all on me. It was my fault. If you don't want a dirt sheet guy to say anything bad or negative about you, something that is like a negative and can be looked at as a negative connotation for your company, then don't do it. And same thing for personal behavior. If you don't want them reporting on bad behavior, then don't be bad. Don't fuck up. And they're doing their job. I mean, if that's their job to report the scoops and be a journalist, then do that. It is what it is. And if something bad comes out that puts a company in a bad light because of something they did that was a poor decision or wrong, whatever, then at the end of the day, that's ultimately on them.
So that brings us into the modern day, where we sit right now in a space where pro wrestling media has caught up to the rest of the media world, but it also sits in this very weird prism where because of what you said, where there's a lot of pro wrestling that's very real, but there's a lot of it that's also very much not real. Mm-hmm. There's this difficulty in understanding of truly how to cover professional wrestling. So from a wrestler's perspective, how do you believe pro wrestling should be covered in 2024?
I mean, I think pro wrestling should be covered as an entertainment event more than anything else. And I think it is absolutely fine if you have people that are more into the sports side of it and they want to rank matches via star ratings or how great they were, the quality of it. But at the end of the day, wrestling is entertainment, and we are manufacturing fights to make people believe that we are, having this legitimate story, and for them to become emotionally attached to it. And I think at the end of the day, entertainment is the best way to cover it. If you want to get down and break it down in the real nitty gritty, I guess there is a place for that, but I don't necessarily think that always belongs directly after a huge show. I don't want to hear about how the sausage is made and how this angle came to be and how why this story was done, why this guy gigged or did whatever. I don't want to compromise the magic, especially if you've had a home run or a grand slam of the show.
But I want to cut you off there though. I think very seldom does that actually happen at these pro wrestling press conferences. I think the questions you get that are real are very seldom about how did you come up with the creative plans for this, or how did you decide to have the character do this or gig here. I think they're much more related to what's going on within the context of the industry or real life events. So if you think that pro wrestling should only be covered as an entertainment entity, then what becomes of the Brandon Thurstons? What becomes of the Cameron Hawkins? The even myself, who asked the question at the Royal Rumble, for example. What becomes of that? Because if those questions aren't asked in these very real life settings about real life stories that have real life consequences on people who are involved in professional wrestling, then when do those questions get asked in general?
I almost feel like those questions would be for like a one-on-one sit down with like whoever is
But what if you're not getting a one-on-one
the boss or the owner? I don't know. Even like I heard in that Busted Open thing said like if you want to have Hunter roll Hunter out and have him answer the questions, or a Shawn Michaels, or whoever at that point, like I could see that more. And I do think it's cool moments like with Cody finishing the story. I mean that's great. Have him come out and do that. I just think there are some times where we need to think a lot more critically about who we put out there.
So I spend a lot of my days in suits. I'm in front of a camera, got to be ready at all times. And I often find myself saying, I cannot wait until I get to wear casual clothing. But the problem is, casual clothing can be hard to come by. Sometimes you find a fit that is maybe too large around the arms, or it's too large around the waistline, but then too skinny around the arms. There's nothing that ever seems to be like the perfect fit. That changed when I discovered True Classic, and we want to help you here at the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy discover True Classic as well. You can pick from their best-selling t-shirts, hoodies, jeans, and more in 3, 6, and 9 packs. They are premium products at an affordable price. They're going to fit you so well, too. They're going to be perfect around the waist, even if you got a little bit of belly. I feel you, boys. And also snug and tight around the arms, so maybe it'll look like you got Matt Hardy arms, for example. You can mix and match clothing to work within your lifestyle, and with their 100% perfect fit guarantee and easy returns, you can rest easy. Know that if you make somewhat of a, ill-timed decision, you can get your money back and pick out something new to wear. True Classic's ultra-comfortable, perfect-fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for all the men in your life, or maybe even yourself. So the holidays are here, and True Classic's ultra-comfortable, perfect-fitting essentials make for that perfect gift under your tree. If you're ready to upgrade your closet, shop now and unlock big savings during their huge holiday sale. Just go to our exclusive link at trueclassic.com/hardy to save. That's trueclassic.com/HARDY. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. End the year with holiday cheer thanks to True Classic.
And like what? So
that's on the wrestling company. That's not on the media.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I know, but I think they need to think a lot more critically about who they're going to put out there. I want to ask you this too, because I did not see it and I just read about it. So did AEW, they had a scrum after a show, and Mariah May came out and like no one asked her a question?
No, she was asked questions. That was an edited video. She didn't get a ton of questions, but she did get asked questions.
Okay. Yeah, because I just saw that recently that said people were afraid to ask her questions, whatever, and it was different because Tony wasn't there, and it was Shivani who was handling it.
I believe it was Shivani.
I just thought that was a very, 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 very weird deal. Like, and I read that, and once again, I didn't see it, and I don't know about it. I had no knowledge of it, and that's why I want to ask you.
Yeah, and so in the greater context of things with coverage, we are in the era of the influencer. We are in the era of the content creator.
Mm-hmm.
And we struggle, I think, a lot in determining.
I struggle. I live with one.
Right, exactly. But we struggle with discerning the difference between those things. A content, quote unquote, a content creator, like your wife, for example, mm-hmm. is not going to ask a difficult question in a press conference because that's not what her assignment is per se. But we're combining those people with individuals who are there to critically cover something. And that, Matt Hardy, is where I believe we get this broad painting of pictures of what wrestling media is. Because I don't believe wrestling media is one thing. I think it's very unfair to paint you to look at a press conference room and to paint everyone there as wanting jobs or wanting to be friends with Tony Khan or Triple H and wanting free tickets. I think that's very unfair. Are there people who...
I haven't said that. I don't subscribe.
No, I know you haven't. I'm saying, but that's a common criticism, right? Mm-hmm. Are there people there who that might be the case for? Possibly. But there's also a lot of people who aren't. And I think it's unfair to paint that picture very broadly and insinuate that every wrestling media member has an agenda per se.
Right.
You know, I don't know. That's always sat with me wrong.
I don't know if every wrestling media member has an agenda, but they might have a podcast.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. Well, so when I come to you with this pitch to start this podcast 3 years ago, it's actually 3 years ago yesterday, we met at Chipotle and had our little powwow. And no smoked brisket then.
Yeah, fortunately, it was before the smoked brisket.
Free smoked brisket. But but when you have someone who, you know, to that point had been associated as a news reporter, you know, I was with Spectrum News in Orlando breaking news about the pandemic and all that stuff. That's where you and I first connected even a year prior to that. And then I'm at these press conferences. When someone comes to you, and you know, my priorities were changing. I was moving out of the reporting realm and I was focusing more on the storytelling, featurey. Like there was a discernment for me there even to make. Was there hesitance on your behalf to, not necessarily me personally, but to partner up with someone on the media side of things? Like I'm curious what your thought process was.
I remember after speaking to you and getting the idea, I remember checking out like your social media stuff and kind of looked back over and saw what was going on. I kind of looked around at like people who interacted with you and endorsed you and what, and I knew quite a few of those people. I don't know. And then upon having the conversation, it's like, okay, well, this guy like is legitimately been involved in media and he's done reporting and whatnot in the news world. And I said, why not give this a shot? I said, you know, podcasts are a big thing and this could be something that could potentially be an outlet for me later on down the road. So why don't we just start it now and give it a shot? And once again, your attitude was great. I was very appreciative of your attitude. And I'm also one of those guys, if someone seems like they're being straightforward and they're very fair and they're very honest, I'm a guy who likes to give other people opportunities if I have the ability.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I'm very big on is media literacy and understanding where something that's reported comes from, tracing it back, making sure it's reputable, not jumping to conclusions based on hearsay. And that, Matt, is something that I feel like we struggle with constantly, not just in wrestling, but in our daily lives here too, with misinformation and disinformation that's out there. Media literacy is a huge thing. I mean, how many times you're chronically online like I am too? You know, how many times do you see someone say, "Oh, Fightful reported this," and Fightful never reported something like that? It happens all the time.
It's an extremely common thing. It's a daily thing.
So how can we better educate wrestling fans and wrestling media onto how to go about covering things to where they have a more thorough understanding of that?
I think we should rely on that Matt fact I used months ago. Matt doesn't speak until he knows the facts. You know what I mean? I just so many people, and it's so easy for them to jump to conclusion because if people lean to a certain way, you know, and God, it's more awful than ever right now, just especially with the presidential race being, you know, less than 2 weeks away. You know, if they see something that they like, they just take it and run with it. You know, because it like fits their narrative, regardless of what side you're on. It's done from all sides, both sides. And and it's one of those things that just like, dude, like you have to have this stuff. Like you have to know it's legitimate before you start speaking about it, before you start posting about it. But that's going to take a long while. That's going to take a long time to fix.
Yeah. So Trump was on the Undertaker's podcast. I reached out to some local council people to try to come on the Extreme Life, but unfortunately, the alert wasn't there.
There you have it.
We don't have the Trump budget, but yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I'm totally with you. It's super important, and it's on media to be thorough too, in really making sure that that stuff is put out there. Do you so to kind of wrap up this conversation? What is your assessment of the quality of wrestling media that we have today?
I mean, I am totally all about it.
They're calling you now for interviews.
There they are.
All these media folks.
These media folks are everywhere. I can appreciate the different levels of it. I just feel, once again, when I said that before, I feel like wrestling primarily, not in all capacities, primarily should be covered as entertainment. I also think there is a group or a percentage of people that want to cover it, you know, by rating the matches, and I'm okay with it. The cage match, like I don't have. That's one thing that I am very happy about with my life. Like I don't have any hate in my heart. Like regardless, I'm very much in the middle. I understand if someone has a different opinion from me, then God bless you. That's fine. I mean, we're allowed. We're human beings. We're allowed to have different opinions, right? I even think like the stuff you said that Brandon Thurston does. I think he does really good work as far as like trying to keep up with like the news stories and even the ratings. And like he's a very much a numbers guy, and he's a super specific numbers guy. And I mean, I think there is a place for all of that, you know. But I think in the big scheme of things, I think what is most important, I think for a wrestling company when it's hot, when it's got momentum, when it's got some buzz, I think you want to try and do all you can to keep the magic intact and promote yourself as entertainment and like do stuff that seems like entertainment where the story stays alive, much like we talked about the old After Mags or the Pro Wrestling Illustrated interviews or the wrestler interviews, whatever. I think there's a place for all that. You know, I don't have any hatred towards all that because everything is like legitimate. Everything is just people doing their jobs and what they love. And that's fine. But I think the way we view these things is also something that should be tweaked and updated as we go forward. I think like we can't put too much stock into like match ratings. I think we have to put more stock on like the quality of the show and kind of like how they're actually doing from a business aspect. And I think a lot of the stuff that Brandon Thurston does covers that too. So like how good stuff is doing from a business perspective. You know, this, you know, AEW, regardless of what you say about them, I mean, they did just sign this huge media rights deal. And that's hugely beneficial for them. And I love the fact that he covered that so thoroughly. So it's weird. Like I like and want to see all these people in the same room, you know, talking to a Triple H or Shawn Michaels at a media scrum. But it's just different. I think the emphasis should be put on entertainment. And then I'm fine with the matches being romanticized and being praised because they were good. And then I think it is important that you do have some people that cover it very genuinely and very factual in a factual manner as far as the way the business is and the goods and bads about different companies.
Yeah. If you're going to have the press conferences and you're going to put these leaders out there in front of media, and there's legitimate media that are in there. When I say legitimate media, I mean people who and that's not to say that a content creator is illegitimate. I don't mean that, but someone who's willing to cover, because you're saying Brandon Thurston's covering it from the business perspective. You know, people like Brandon Thurston, and there's others too, are also covering it, talking about these hard items that are very important, like lawsuits or sexual misconduct or whatever. Like that stuff is very relevant to the performers, to the audiences, to shareholders, whatever it may be. And if these individuals like Paul Levesque or Tony Khan are out there on the dais talking, and you're going to invite people who are willing to ask those questions, I think they need to be ready to answer those questions.
Sure. And they need to do their best to be transparent.
And you were saying before, like, well, that's what one-on-ones are for. These companies aren't giving one-on-ones with these people. So if they're not going to give one-on-ones with those people, then this is going to be the only opportunity where those questions are going to get asked. If you don't want that question asked at a press conference, if you don't want that Royal Rumble disaster that happened with Paul Levesque after the big event, and you've got 3 journalists back to back asking questions about sexual misconduct and Vince McMahon. If you don't want that to happen as a company, then you need to be granting outlets a proper avenue to ask those questions in a setting that's not this press conference after an event.
Did they ever release a statement after all that?
So I get it. Right now you're saying to me, John, I want to go to the World Series between the Yankees and Dodgers, but tickets are like $2,000 to get in. And you would be right. However, I know that the absolute best app for buying last-minute tickets when those prices fall is Game Time. See, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets when you're looking for your next event, whether it's sports, entertainment, theater, or whatever it may be. This is the truth. I have turned Game Time on to so many of my friends and colleagues in the sports industry using our promo code Hardy, helping them save $20 off their first purchase because prices do go down around the time of the event, and Game Time puts the entire ticket buying experience in the palm of your hands. With their all-in pricing, you can toggle the feature. It's going to show you the total up front. No surprise fees at checkouts. You can see a panoramic view from your seat. You can ensure that with their lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper price elsewhere. And with their Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code HARDY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code HARDY, HARDY, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
WWE. Did WWE release a statement at all?
I would have to go back and look for sure. I would imagine they did, but regardless of whether or not they did, a one-size-fits-all statement does not answer all those questions.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm just curious if you knew.
I would have to go back. There's been a whirlwind of this story. I'd have to go back and try to figure out the exact day when stuff was said. But I mean, if you remember, when I believe it was, one of us, it might have been Thurston who asked Paul if he had read the lawsuit, and this was 2 days after everything came out, and he had said no. So again, you're putting someone in a position where they have to answer to these things publicly after an event. And if someone sits there and says, well, it's not the time or place, then when's the time or place? Because they're not getting one-on-one opportunities to sit down with Paul Levesque, or it's not, hey guys, let's keep these questions to just the event, and after the event, we'll have an actual scrum over on the side where anyone who wants to talk to him about these other things can. That's not happening. That's not uncommon, by the way.
That's not a bad idea, though.
That's not uncommon in real events, in the real world, where stuff like this happens, where if Tony Khan wanted to talk just about the logistics of a show afterwards, okay, we're going to pull you aside, and people who want to talk to him about this can do that. That happens in the real world. Right. You will have a public media availability where you'll get all the fluff questions about the event itself, and then they'll do individuals or what in action, because people don't, I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant here, but what a lot of people don't understand is these things you see on WWE or AEW, those are press conferences. Those are not a scrum. A scrum is when you have the individual standing with a group of reporters and the people are putting their microphones out, huddled together. That's what a scrum is.
TK did a good job of branding it then.
Well, because AEW used to do scrums. At the first few events, they would take you into a media room. Someone would come out and you'd have 20 journalists huddled over trying to ask questions. That was the first few AEW events. Then they changed it to a press conference style, but they just kept the term scrum. So logistical thing. But anyway, my point is, if you want to avoid that spectacle, then I think that's the avenue in which you do it. No one has adopted that yet. So
that's great. Okay, this is a great suggestion that you just provided, and you just laid it out right now. Come in and talk entertainment, talk about the show, do that, stay on the topic, do that for the whole while. Then when it's all said and done, take whoever's in charge, and then you can cut the cameras off the feed so it's not a public thing, and or whatever. Then they do the other scrum and they record it themselves or whatever else.
Yeah, I mean that's what would happen. You get people recording on their phones, they post clips to social, whatever. I mean that's how it works in a lot of the world. It's just wrestling is always behind the times when it comes to stuff like that. So anyone listening, there's
Yeah,
an idea for you
hell
on
of an
both
idea.
sides of the equation. Who do you think is the best in terms of quality in wrestling media out there right now? I'm curious what you'd have to say to that.
In wrestling media. I'll tell you something. I mean, I'm a big fan of Sean Ross Sapp, and it's so funny just because today we were doing the press conference, right? And they said, "Oh, we also have this person wasn't able to attend in person, so they wanted to send in a question." They said, "And the question is for Frankie Kazarian." Said it's from Sean Ross Sapp, and Frankie was playing it up real big anyway, right? And he said, "Oh God, kill me," And then he asked him the question and did that, but I popped real huge when it was with him, and it's just so strange, like. I remember like when people first started talking how Meltzer had such a huge role and stuff. Wade Keller, we did a couple shoot interviews with him. I'd interacted with Wade Keller some back in the day. Mike Johnson, I'd seen him around at a lot of events in the Northeast. I like Mike Johnson. I'm a big fan of Mike Johnson too. I will say him as well. But like Sean just seems like a younger guy who's just kind of takes a different approach to it. But he definitely follows through, and he's very credible, and he's typically pretty accurate.
I would definitely agree with that sentiment. You know how highly I think of Sean for sure. There's a lot of quality ones out there, and I give a lot of credit to the content creators who are out there hustling, and that content humanizes the talent. When you get those fun interviews, that and it's fun content to do. It is
Right.
like when I asked Kofi Kingston at the Royal Rumble, we were talking, we talked about some more serious things, but I also talked to him about like if he had his Meaty Man Invitational that Big E suggested, who would be in the Meaty Man Invitational? That's fun stuff to talk about. And I'm sure the wrestlers probably enjoy that stuff too.
Yeah, just something that is a different pace from the normal combo.
Yeah, for sure. So good stuff there, Matt. Anything else you want to add in this conversation?
I just want to say a couple of the times that HBK, Shawn Michaels, has sat in front of a crowd and answered media questions. I think he's been very, very good.
He's been excellent.
Yeah.
I actually think somehow, some way, Shawn Michaels might be the best representative as a public figure for any of these companies when it comes to facing the media, which is nuts considering who Shawn Michaels used to be and what he is now. And I think it's that he's just very real and upfront about things. And I think that's huge for transparency.
Well, I think too. I mean, Sean's been through some shit, but I think he's at that point where he's like in life, like, all right, like if you want to get past this, you just got to address it. You got to look it in his face and you got to address it and move on. And that's something I think that's very important for anybody that's trying to answer a tough question.
Well, and two, it sends a great message for his locker room as a leader about what leadership looks like and being transparent and being open and constructive. I think it's really important to send a message to your locker room. So I always enjoy talking to Sean. I think he's a great representative for WWE on these calls. And do I get frustrated sometimes with these Paul Levesque and Tony Khan availabilities every now and then? Every now and then I do. I don't think they were always what they are now. I think they were a lot more conducive a few years ago, and they've evolved over the years. I get everyone's got their own agenda. But I will say, man, you can't say it's not interesting or intriguing to find out what these people say in these things.
Right.
You always ask me after, did I miss anything of note in the press conference? They say anything. So ever since Brawl Out, like you kind of have to.
Oh my God. Once again, they were just talking about that. What a mess that was. That put a big dent in AEW.
Well, you know what it was too? I mean, like, and I think we talked about it that night, you and I know I definitely tweeted it. That was an industry altering event. And it was a press conference.
Right.
It altered the course of wrestling history. Like, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre don't have that feud without Brawl Out happening.
Right.
He's not back in WWE without that feud happening.
Right.
Maybe AEW doesn't take some of the changes that it's had to encounter without that happening.
Yeah, I mean,
All off a press conference.
It definitely had consequences.
Huge consequences. And I do want to push back on our pal Dave LaGreca for a second, because he talked about that press conference in that clip. And he said, oh, no one asked Punk any follow-ups. I'm pretty sure that that's not accurate. I'm pretty sure Punk was asked multiple follow-ups. I'd have to go back and watch, but I was there. I'm pretty sure I asked Punk a related question. And I know there were others too. So I do take a little, Mr. LaGreca, I take a little offense at that. But yeah, it was surreal. And you hate that the press conference became the most newsworthy thing that came out of the event.
Yeah, because it was a great show too. There were so many highlights on the show. Yeah, and it really muddied down the show so much.
It absolutely did, and that was a shame. So
yeah,
make of that what you will. You know, Matt Presley's watching live via WrestlingCoinAlba.com. He says, "First off, how you both doing? Doing well, man." And he says, second, either one of you heard any of the old Jim Ross radio show? What do you think of it? It was kind of a precursor to the podcast. He feels like.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard any.
It was the Ross Report, and he used to do. Remember, he used to do it as a blog too.
I do remember a little bit of his blog that he would do online.
But I found that so interesting because he was actively employed by WWE, and he would talk about like contract rumors and industry rumors like that.
Yeah, I almost feel like JR probably would have had to clear that stuff too if he was going to say it, and there may have been like some motivation to get some of that stuff out there.
There might have been. Because that's where he said, I'll never forget this, when the WWE draft happened, what was it, 2008? Like the week before on his blog, he wrote, I don't want to go to SmackDown. And Vince saw it and put him on SmackDown.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Retaliation. So, oh man, wild stuff there, folks. Good stuff, Matt. Really appreciated the conversation on this stuff. And I appreciate all you guys tuning in every single week to the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts. And we want you to join our team, advertisewithhardy.com. Get your business to the extreme. That's advertisewithhardy.com. Gets your business, gets your product out in front of thousands of listeners and viewers every single week on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And of course, WrestleCade.com. Pick up your tickets for Night Outcade with the Hardys. You're going to get an Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast. You're going to get music. You're going to get a whole lot more. It's going to be fantastic. That is WrestleCade.com. Matt Hardy, anything else you'd like to add?
I was just going to say, I just happened to click on my phone. I was just realizing what time it was. I saw the Dynamite ratings just came in. You seen them yet?
I've not.
I was going to say it's 6:37. So there it is. NXT. They've got them 4 weeks back to back. Interesting.
We're headed into World Series territory here, so we'll see. Because you know that's where my eyes are going to be.
Oh yeah.
Pro wrestling may as well not exist in the next week for me.
Yeah, right. This is your time.
This is my time.
It's your time.
This is my time, man. Dodgers and Yankees. How many games?
Oh my God.
I know you're on the periphery of all this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Give me something to be angry about.
Six games.
6 games. Who wins?
You think they'll go 6? I'm going to go with the Yankees.
Going with the Yankees.
I'm going to go with the Yankees.
Okay.
How about you? What do you got?
My brain says the Dodgers, and the Dodgers in 6. But I will tell you, I think if you watch, I don't know if you saw it, that Juan Soto home run that sent the Yankees to the World Series last week.
I did. I saw that. It's
one of the greatest at-bats you're going to see in baseball history. Yeah. It was.
He's one of your guys. I love how you put him on.
He's an iconic talent at 25 years old. It's pretty incredible. So if you love baseball, watch how this guy plays the game. It's just different. You know, I have a few nicknames for him. I have Daddy Soto, Father Soto. He's 25, but I digress here.
He's wonderful. He's wonderful.
He is wonderful. He certainly is. The words have been spoken. We'll see you next week right here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Delete!
My skin's dying because you're under it. I'm done lying to myself for this, for all the wonder in believing that it's making me weak. I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete. My skin's dying. I'm done lying.
What would you do with 2 house payments? Tony Schiavone here to tell you about SaveWithConrad.com. When you refinance with Save with Conrad, you can do so with confidence, knowing not only will you get a great rate, but you will get to skip 2 house payments. You don't need perfect credit, and there's no money out of your pocket. Find out how we can help you skip 2 today at SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com.